Hello and welcome to your weekly briefing for Global Conflict 1. In this video, I will be covering days 102 to 108, and as usual doing my best to document the various political changes that have occurred within this world in that time frame. So the big news, I think, in the past week has been the split up of House 2. Now, previous to this episode, leading up maybe for the last couple of months, we have gotten word, let's say, that there were troubles inside House 2. However, the conflict with House 19 sort of put a band-aid over the issues between these players. And the big problem is I'm still not sure what exactly drove them apart. I am only able to observe the actual results of this. I don't actually have somebody in House 2 with the know behind that. So in this video, I'm going to be referring to House 2 as, or what used to be House 2, that area of land, as House 7, because they have taken over for House 2. So as we all know, House 2 favored House 15 in any potential war between House 15 and House 10. But with House 7 now taking over, I'm not sure they're going to side with House 15. And as we've already seen with the Anthrax Raise group, they already intend to join House 10 and fight on their side. So it looks, right now, it looks like the war with House 15, or the war between House 15 and House 10, is quite likely. There's going to be sort of an ultimatum due no later by tomorrow that's really going to decide on this. In the past day, though, the remaining alliance against House 19 have met and sort of delivered the final peace terms, their peace terms to House 19. Now, in this alliance, of course, were all the houses against House 19 currently, except for House 15, who had already sort of broken rank and attempted to negotiate with House 19 on their own, and quite successfully, too, I believe. It sets us up with the potential for House 15 to ally with House 19 against the rest of the world, because the terms, the way I've heard the terms being described is that they're not all that accommodating for House 19, and there is a chance, a rather likely chance, that House 19 might refuse them altogether, which would leave them at war with what's left of that alliance against them, which includes House 10, what's left of House 2, it's more like House 7 now, House 17. And if they do side with House 19, I would imagine that would draw the rest of the houses on the sidelines or that are currently at war with House 19 into the war with House 15 as well. I really can't see it going any other way, because the way it is right now is House 10 and House 17 are very close. They have been working in unison for quite some time now, closer than the other houses in this alliance. You know, the four houses previously had come together to work together against House 19, but House 17 and House 10, I had been hearing things that they were working together even closer with each other than House 2 and House 15. So some might be wondering, you know, what was sort of the nail in the coffin for this war between House 15 and House 10? It's not declared yet, but it should be within the next day or so. We're going to know whether that's going to be an official thing in the near future. And now keep in mind that House 15 still hasn't made official peace with House 19 yet, but the peace looks very likely, and the thing that I'm hearing that drove sort of, like I said, the final nail in the coffin, with House 10 is they were having problems with communication, or House 10 and House 15 were having problems with communication. It really, I don't think it was all on one side or the other, but House 15 wanted North India, and apparently they had been asking or attempting to contact House 10 over this now for some time, and House 10 has not either been responsive or cooperative. I'm not sure which, and I'm not sure why exactly House 15 wanted North India. In addition to that, House 14 also took in a faction that House 15 was previously fighting, which could contribute to that as well. So I think those are the two defining circumstances that have been presented to me within the past week that may go a long way in explaining the route that House 10 and House 15 have embarked upon, and that they're going to inevitably end up colliding here. And this leaves us in a particularly interesting situation when it comes to House 9. There are players in House 9 who are both for House 15 and quite against House 15, quite opposed to them. Players, especially in the more Middle Eastern countries, appear to rather despise the presence of House 15. They see him as a foreign entity in those lands as they came over across the ocean, which is, let's say there are certain parallels you could draw to that, but they would be rather interested in seeing House 15 thrown out of that area. And that could lead to a fracture in House 9, because there are some players in House 9 who are quite friendly towards House 15, and that would probably like to see an alliance with them, because they themselves have a grievance against House 10. A lot of them, because House 10, quite a while ago, they made peace with House 19 behind the backs of House 9, which is sort of funny because that's what House 15 has gone and done now to the rest of the alliance. But yeah, so the peace summit was held today with House 19 and the remainder of the alliance, and the peace terms were sent. We'll see by this time next week if that pans out. And House 15 themselves are also negotiating with House 19. That ceasefire that they have should have been worked out by tomorrow, I believe. It will be a week, and that's how long that ceasefire was going for. So I think we'll next be getting down to the various country, province, and county changes in the past week. And I have been debating with myself whether or not I should just remove reports of counties being flipped by houses in their own alliance. I see this quite a bit, especially in the Middle East. Every week, the lands here seem to flip between these three houses, House 15, House 4, and House 18. They just keep swapping them around, and I don't see any point in mentioning it every time, because it is not it's not relevant, really. It's not a significant political shift. It's just the same alliance holding the land, just in a different faction or a different house. And the same goes for Russia. They're constantly moving those players around. Either they're moving the players around the houses, or different houses are taking over the seats. But the problem is it's all in the same alliance, so it really doesn't matter politically. It doesn't signify much of anything. Now, okay, you could argue Canada. Does that signify anything? Yes, because Canada has had reports of internal conflict. And though I don't know the exact source of it, it is not, we know that Canada is having problems, or not Canada specifically, House 2 is having problems. And it's very likely that alliance is going to break or fracture off into different houses. I don't know. They might come together again under House 7. It's all pretty much up in the air right now. But getting back to the idea of documenting the country changes. So, of course, the big one is Canada, flipping from House 2 to House 7. Greenland has flipped from House 2 to neutral. Neutral is not a house. Over here we have Kazakhstan flipping from House 17 to House 19. And remember that House 19 is still at war with House 17 as of this report, so that was likely not territory exchanged as per peace deals. But I can't verify that. A lot has happened in China. At one time, House 12 was looking quite good in China. Now they have one county left, and this could be all part of the fact that the House 2 alliance is breaking apart. In the past week, China has flipped from House 12 to House 19, obviously. Iran has flipped from House 4 to House 15. I mentioned that I might not be reporting these from next week onwards. Turkey, again, has flipped from House 4 to House 18. Once again, that's a house within its own alliance, so it really doesn't mean anything. And Germany has flipped from House 19 to House 2. Interestingly enough, that was the only significant thing that House 2 has done in the past week. Now, in regards to county changes, starting at the upper left, we have Alaska switching from House 2 to House 7. Northwest Canada, House 2 to House 7. Northeast Canada, House 2 to House 7. Southwest Canada, House 0 to House 7. If you recall last week, that was controlled by the Anthrax Rays group. But House 7 has been sent in to take control of it now. Anthrax is still without a house, but it is reported that if they join a house, it will be House 10. Over here in China, now I really shouldn't mangle this province's name, but it was flipped to House 5. Northeast China was flipped, as I mentioned, from House 12 to House 13. Myanmar was flipped from House 6 to House 0. Thailand was flipped from House 6 to House 0. As mentioned before, Iraq was flipped from House 4 to House 15, and North Saudi Arabia has been flipped from House 18 to neutral status. If we want to do a quick recap of the alliances, the only one that has actually changed is House 2, and this is rather interesting. There were reports of House 1 being a part of the House 19 alliance, but after accepting Dave 1's faction back in House 15 resumed their war with House 1, so it is in question whether or not House 19 is still backing House 1, if they consider them a sister house or at all, or just an ally. Because if House 19 and House 15 end up in an alliance of convenience against the rest of the world, providing House 15 goes ahead and attacks House 10, where does that put House 1, really? And you gotta hand it to House 1 for continuing to make a splash in the world at all. They're not very big. They don't have that many players. I think there's just one real core faction that is causing the most trouble right now for House 15. So what was left of the House 2 faction, House 2, House 7, House 12, and House 5. They could be all independent by now, as well as House 3. One last thing I should make note of is that Western Mongolia has been flipped from House 19 to House 15. This could be part of the peace settlement between the two, so I'm not thinking that's too significant. Yeah, let's not drag this out any longer. I apologize if this week's was a little bit less structured. I didn't get quite as much time to sort through all my sources and organize them, really. But I do appreciate you listening or watching. And as always, I hope to see you next week.